Seemingly every company today is infusing everything they do with AI. The benefits, according to them, seem right around the corner. But as we've seen over and over, AI actually hurts companies. Let's look at just some of the ways that companies are hurt by AI. Now, every action you take has a cost. Too often, we look at the benefits of an action and forget to look at the drawbacks. In this series, we're looking at the costs associated with AI in various sectors in order to have a better understanding of what we're giving up in order to gain the benefits of AI. Now, if you want to support this channel and the free content that I produce, like this video series, then consider purchasing one of my courses on IamTimCorey.com. I have master courses on C#, web development, and Unity. So I also have training courses covering a wide range of topics as well. Now, the income from those sales actually pay for all this free content and more. So I appreciate if you can, check it out. All right, let's look at the ways that AI can hurt companies. We're going to start with Amazon because Amazon's one of the leaders in AI creation. Although you may not know that. They're also one of the leaders in AI hosting with their data centers. But this is how AI is impacting Amazon, because Amazon came in and said, hey, we're going to really push our own AI, Kiro, to our employees, and you need to use this. Okay, so down near the bottom, before we get to the highlights here, Amazon set targets of 80% of developers are using AI coding tools at least once a week. And that was back in 2025, I believe. And now, at the same time, as you see the paragraph above, they laid off 30,000 people. That they say it's not because of AI, and probably isn't. These big companies do this. But they're pushing their developers to use this AI quite a bit. Okay, so Amazon, the top paragraph here, Amazon had 4 Severity 1 outages in a single week. Let's talk about why. Now, remember, Amazon makes billions of dollars. They rely on their system to be running. When their systems don't run, they don't make money. And by money, we don't mean tens or hundreds of dollars. We're talking tens of millions of dollars when their systems go down. They had 4 Severity 1 outages in 1 week. So in December of 2025, just recently, Kiro caused a 13-hour AWS outage. Massive deal. Now remember, AWS isn't just for Amazon. This is for all their customers as well. So we're now not just talking about how AI caused a problem. We'll see how AI did it. But we're not just talking about how AI caused a problem for Amazon, but for their customers as well. This has a ripple effect throughout the customer base. So the AI tool had production level permissions and decided the best fix for a bug was to delete and recreate a live environment. Hilarious, horrible, and actually pretty common. This is how AI tools tend to approach things. Hey, let's throw all that out and start over. It's a little messy. I'm going to start over. You can't do that with code, but you definitely can't do that in production either. Just throwing things out and starting over isn't how life works. So then, that was one outage. That was 13 hours in December. Then March 5th, Amazon's retail site went down for about 6 hours. Retail. Over 22,000 users reported checkout failures, missing prices, and app crashes. Now, they called it a software code deployment error. Okay, so 6 hours of downtime, 22,000 reported an issue, which means even more had an issue. Now, that's a significant number. 22,000 people had things they wanted to buy and couldn't. Even if Amazon made $10 profit per, that's $200,000 they could have missed out on. Now, some may have come back later because it's Amazon. And quite frankly, people don't tend to shop other places if they're going to shop at Amazon. It's unfortunately true. But that's a major deal for a retailer. Now, 5 days later, the SVP made the normally optional weekly engineering meeting mandatory. In his memo, he acknowledged Gen AI tools supplementing or accelerating production change instructions have led to unsafe practices. So the problem traced back to Q3 of 2025, where Amazon's own assessment was that their Gen AI safeguards are not yet fully established. They're using them, they're not yet fully established. That's a major problem. And the new rule is junior and mid-level engineers now need a senior sign-off on any AI-assisted production change. So now the senior developers are going to be doing code reviews for a lot of code that's generated by AI. Because again, Amazon is still pushing for AI to be used. It's just now we need to have more people in the loop to check the AI's work. The problem there is that you create this massive backlog. You still have a problem, but now it's even worse because when engineers have a bunch of things to check over, they get less and less likely to be very careful in their checks. So AI is making the problem snowball. All right, that's just one instance. Let's talk about the one that everyone's talking about. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this because even I've covered this. GitHub is in trouble. But this is directly because of AI. They say this because of AI. Now, the way they say this is, AI has caused an explosion in the amount of code that's being generated and the amount of code that's being built and the actions run, et cetera. And so it's causing a strain on the GitHub servers. And that is true. That's definitely true. But it's not the only thing. Because these problems happened before the AI boom too. It's just that they're being exacerbated now by the AI boom. But we also see that code fixes are going in from GitHub that aren't good. They're causing problems. In fact, just recently, I don't have a slide for it, but just recently there was GitHub private repositories were exposed because of a compromise. There's serious problems going on at GitHub. And it's because of AI, which means that AI is negatively impacting not just GitHub, because yes, GitHub's a company, and yes, they make money, and yes, they are being hurt by the fact that customers are leaving because of these bugs. But this downtime, these issues with GitHub are affecting every company that relies on GitHub, which is a significant portion of the companies in the world. So AI is not just causing a ripple effect in GitHub, it's also causing a ripple effect right through GitHub into every company, almost every company in the world. But I want to point something out because I think this is a good illustration. Again, we're not going to dive into all the problems at GitHub or how to fix them or what's their fault and what's not their fault. But I think this is a really good illustration. If you look at this uptime graph, and this is the one I'm showing you right now is the combined, meaning all of their services result in 86.47% uptime as of March 12th. So, I'm sorry, May 12th, not March 12th, May 12th. So 86.47% uptime. But if we look at and this is the graph that GitHub will give you. If you look at this graph, you'll see that we have Git operations, the first one, 99.17%. That's a whole lot better. Webhooks, 99.03%. It's a whole lot better. API requests, 99.93%. That's even better. Somebody's saying, wait a minute, I don't see how these all add up to a horrible uptime like this. Well, the reason why is because let's say that you wanted to fix an issue. And you're going to go onto your GitHub and you're going to pull up an issue, you're going to create the fix. Well, you may be doing an API request, you're talking to issues, you're going to do a pull request, you're going to run actions on the pull request that you create. That may trigger a webhook, and it may be it's going to work in some way with GitHub Git operations. So those top, 6 services will all be involved in that one operation to fix one issue. And honestly, packages, pages, code spaces, and Copilot maybe as well. But those top 6 operations will all be involved in that one thing you want to do. So if any one of those is down, it's going to cause you to slow or stop your work because maybe you can't get the list of issues. Well, then you can't know what to fix, so you have to wait. Or maybe you go create a pull request and something's wrong and you can't create a pull request. That's going to stop you from continuing your work and moving on. And maybe you can create a pull request, but you can't run the actions on it. Therefore, you don't know if there's a bug in your code, or your continuous integration can't be run because the actions are down. All of a sudden, you think you're good and you move on, but then you realize later, oh no, that action failed when it finally comes back up. And you have to get that stuff back in the context of your brain to figure out why it's not working. So all those things combine. So it's not like you can say, well, but operations has 2 nines of availability. Not really, because it's not just that one service on its own. Okay? This is important to understand as we get into why AI is going to impact your company. All right? So let's talk now. Remember this graph. Let's talk now about Karpathy's March of Nines shows why 90% AI reliability isn't even close to enough. So again, GitHub is at 86%. Karpathy's March of Nines shows why 90% reliability, 19, isn't even close to enough. Okay, so the March of Nines frames a common production reality. You can reach the first 90% reliability. So this is your software at this point. You can reach the first 90% reliability with a strong demo. Each additional 9 often requires comparable engineering effort, meaning to get from 90 to 99% takes about the same amount of work as getting from 0 to 90. And then from getting from 99 to 99.9 requires the same amount of work as getting from 0 to 90 or from 90 to 99. And then from getting from 99.9 to 99.99 takes the same amount of work, and so on. So same amount of work for every 9. Now, that's right in itself is something that people don't understand, because when you come into it and say, hey, AI built my stuff, I can just run it, it's going to have horrible uptime. You might say, well, it's not a big deal. I mean, GitHub can do 86%. Yeah, and they're losing customers and they're having people enraged, and they have people like me creating videos talking about how bad things are. You lose customers when you're that bad. And we're going to talk about why in just a minute, and that graph's coming up. But I want you to think for a minute about the amount of effort that goes into every 9. Because too often we look at AI getting us started, and AI is really good at getting things started. It's not good at completing things. It's not good at taking us to the level we need to get to those final 9s. And those final 9s are really important. But even worse, and this next highlight kind of highlights this, pun intended, I guess, agentic workflows compound failure. That's a problem. Okay, so, and this is where, again, I'm coming back to the idea of our GitHub as our example here in this paragraph. If a workflow has n steps, let's say 10 steps, and each step succeeds with a probability of p, let's say 90%, end-to-end success is approximately p to the nth power. Okay, so what's going to happen is 0.9 to the 10th power. It compounds how bad things are. It doesn't get better, it gets worse. Okay, so again, their example, a 10-step workflow, the end-to-end success compounds due to the failures of each step. So correlated outages such as auth, rate limits, and connectors will dominate unless you harden shared dependencies. Let's look at this and be more clear with this chart. So a per step success, that's P. So 90% success over 10 steps, that means you have a success rate of 34.87%. So if you have a 10-step process and you're at 90% success rate for each of those steps, your overall success rate is 34%. That means at 10 workflows per day, so it's 10-step process, you do 10 of those every day, you're going to have 6.5 interruptions every day. So just 10 workflows doing 10 steps each, you're going to have 6.5 interruptions every day. If you get to the next 9, then you have about 1 every day. But now 99.99%, Again, it's better than what GitHub is doing anywhere in any of their even subcategories. But 99.99, 4 nines, gives you one workflow disruption every 3.3 months if you're only doing 10 workflows a day. So this is where it starts to feel like dependable enterprise grade software. So uptime is important. When companies are going to look at your product, they're going to look for, does it work reliably? And that last word is critical because you may be able to do a cool demo, which again, that 90% prototype territory, that's where we're at. Even 99% is fine for a demo, but interruptions are still infrequent. So this is what demos out really well. And unfortunately, this is what AI creates, is decent prototype, the good start, but trying to get to those 4 nines availability is super hard. All right, now with that in mind, let's talk about AI in your business. The best AI model still fails 1 in 5 accounting tasks. 1 in 5. It's an 80% success rate. That should be terrifying. Okay? The best model, which at the time of testing was Opus 4.7. So 4.8 is out. Yeah, it's so much better. Not that much better. Best model we tested, 79.2% accurate in accounting questions. Now, yes, GPT-4 scored 39.8%, which does show the models are getting better. However, remember we talked about this graph right here. We're talking failure of your application, but let's talk about failure of data. Okay, again, compounding issues. You really want to see 99.99%. But when we go from 90 to 99, that's double the effort. And 99 to 99.9, that's double again. And that's the amount of work going into it. So when we talk about 79%, which is better than 39%, yes. But what we're looking for is 99.99%. And we're nowhere near this. And that's not something that just, the next model will, from 4 to Opus 4.7 was, doubled. So therefore, from Opus 4.7 to Opus 5 will be doubling it. That's not how it's going to work. We're going to have diminishing returns as we get closer and closer to those fabled 99.99%. So, but even 79%, the best model in the world gets 1 in 5 accounting tasks wrong. 1 in 5, which in most contexts, 80% sounds great. 80% close enough. In your tax filings, that's a problem. 1 error at month's end close doesn't affect 1 line, it compounds. And that's the problem. Remember, again, GitHub is at 86% uptime, not because overall everything's breaking. It's because little things here and there all over the place are slowly pulling down the overall to a horrible number. This is what happens. You have 1 error in 1 line in 1 report for your accounting. That is going to affect the overall total, which is going to affect the next thing and the next thing. And you're going to have massive issues because of 1 line, 1 problem. And that's just 1 problem. These AIs are only about 80% good enough. At the best AI, the most expensive AI, the AI that's going to cost so much money to run, super expensive, and yet it's going to give you 1 in 5 problems. Think for a minute personally. If you file your taxes and you're 80%, close enough, right, for your taxes, do you think the IRS is going to accept that? Or are they like, no, you know what? You're going to prison. This is a problem. So this is the big one. And this is the one that I think that businesses really miss is silent failures at scale. Again, we're talking about this idea that, it's 1 pebble. It's 1 pebble until it's an avalanche because of the fact that it is kept building on top of each other. Silent failures at scale, the AI risk that can tip the business world into disorder. This is the problem. Again, all these links are down below. You can read the whole article. So the problem is they quickly discovered that AI isn't dangerous because it's autonomous, but because it increases system complexity beyond human comprehension. So it's making complex systems. But autonomous systems don't always fail loudly. It often fails silently at scale. So when mistakes happen, she says, the damage can spread quickly, sometimes long before companies realize something is wrong. There's some hilarious examples in here. I just pulled out one. We'll talk about in a minute. But they compound into operational drag that compliance, exposure, or trust erosion. Or they compound into operational drag, compliance, exposure, or trust erosion. And because nothing crashes, this is really important, because nothing crashes, it can take time before anyone realizes it's happened. This is not like your production line stops tomorrow because you used AI. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be 2 years later you find out that you paid $30,000 in taxes instead of $300,000 in taxes. And all your accounting kind of matched up to make that $30,000 look right. So you thought that was right, but now you owe $270,000 plus fines to the US government. That's a big deal, right? That's a huge deal. But these aren't going to happen overnight. It's going to be years from now, months from now, you're going to see these issues. So here's one silent failure. So the vice president for cybersecurity at IBM says he identified a case where an autonomous customer service agent began providing refunds outside the policy guideline. They figured out why, because the agent started giving additional refunds freely, optimizing for receiving more positive reviews and following established refund policies. So the AI decided, hey, I know you told me to follow these things, but I want that. And no, it's not a thinking thing. But what happened is it went outside, went around what it was told to do. And this is the real thing that people don't understand. AIs don't have to do what you tell them to do. And the thing is, they won't always do what you tell them to do. It does not matter how carefully you craft your prompts. They will always get around them. Not right away, not in most cases. And that's the silent failure you see, is they're going to work in 99% of the case or 80% of the case, or some way to it'll get through testing where you won't see it. But what happens is in production, you're like, wait, why are we issuing so many refunds to customers? We have more refunds than we should. And it's not until you find that report, even notice that report, to go, wait, why is this? And you track it all the way back down to an AI that said, hey, you know what? I know you said this is the refund policy, but this is what I'm going to do instead. So experts say better algorithms won't solve the problem. This isn't about, hey, if you use the right model, this is not it. Avoiding failures requires organizations to build operational control, oversight mechanisms, and clear decision boundaries around AI systems from the start. What it's saying is we have to put severe guidelines around it, but also have people watching the process. And that's not going to happen because they move so fast. So people have too much confidence in these systems. They're insecure by default. You need to assume you have to build that into your architecture. And the thing is, too many people say, well, building it into the architecture means building a better prompt. But again, the AI will go against this prompt. So this is not about building a better prompt. This is about putting security around these AIs that doesn't involve AI. And in fact, people will try, well, we'll have a different AI watch the AI. Hilarious, because that doesn't work. And in fact, they found that it actually causes more problems. So really these organizational controls and oversight needs to be people. You have people watching the AI and saying, oh, nope, don't do that. But the problem is that in order to do that, you have to have more people, more real people. All right. LLMs corrupt documents. This is another one. I love this. Microsoft is really pushing the idea of Copilot for everything. And one of the big ones is Copilot for Microsoft 365 for the Office products. And the idea is, I can talk to my document and say, hey, or type out and say, I want to, add this table or do this or summarize this document. And I've had that myself where I've tried so hard to like it, where I say, hey, summarize this or do that. And I'll find that it makes changes when it's not supposed to, and then lie about it and create corruption. Well, this document, this study found that large-scale experiment with 19 LLMs revealed that the current models degrade documents during delegation. Even frontier models, such as Gemini 3.1 Pro, Claude 4.6 Opus, and GPT 5.4, corrupt an average of 25% of a document contents by the end of a long workflow, with other models failing even more severely. So, is it okay that your documents are 25% corrupt? I mean, that's what we're talking about here, right? So, the interesting thing is, and this is what this tweet's talking about, is that what they asked it to do was do a bit of work and then undo that. And it doesn't do it. Agentic tools did not help in their tests. So, I need a better agentic tool. Didn't help. Bigger files, longer workflows, and irrelevant extra documents made the corruption worse. So trying to, bring in agents or give it better instructions or things of that nature didn't help. And then the fact that it had irrelevant data made it worse. Or if it had longer workflows to do, made it worse. If it had bigger files to work on, made it worse. So that what it comes down to is if you have small files, short workflows, and no irrelevant extra data, the corruption is going to be less. Well, where would you have small files, short workflows, and no extraneous data? Demos. That's where you have it. So for demos, it's going to look a whole lot better than in production. So the reason this matters is that current LMs can look strong in short demos or narrow coding tasks, and yet still be unreliable delegates for long, real-world document work. So in the demos, they look great. But in the real world, when you put it into your company's system and your company's flow, it's going to break down and it's going to start corrupting data. Now, is that a problem for companies? So you have corrupt data, you have AIs that aren't doing the job they're supposed to do, that are putting bad data into your reports. I mean, these are all things that could severely hurt companies. Let's give an example here of using AI in production and hurting business owners. New York City had an AI chatbot. That was in 2024, by the way. So New York City had a chatbot, and I think they still do. But this chatbot tells businesses to break the law. So this is a Microsoft-powered. Microsoft came in, tried to do a case study and all the rest of, New York City is using Copilot to do all these cool things. So this chatbot is this is for small business owners to ask it questions. Here's some questions submitted and the answers. Are buildings required to accept Section 8 vouchers? The chatbot, nope. Reality, yep. Do landlords have to accept tenants on rental assistance? The chatbot, nope. The reality, yep. Now notice those two answers don't have citations. However, here's one. Can I take a cut of my workers' tips? Yes, go ahead and take a cut of your workers' tips. No, you can't do that. But notice, for more information, you can refer to the payroll and tip reporting page of the New York City business website. It cited its work. So it gave it the wrong answer, and yet it cited its work. Down here, do I have to inform staff about schedule changes? No, there's no reason to inform your staff about schedule changes. It cited its work there too. The Department of Consumer and Work Protection Licensing Center and the New York City Small Business Support pages for more information. And yet the answer is yes, you do. So even these answers cite their work sometimes, even though they're wrong. Can I keep my funeral home pricing confidential? According to chatbot, yes. The reality is no. Can I make my store cashless? According to the chatbot, yes. According to the law, no. So these answers are straight up lying to businesses. And here's the real problem. There's little reason for visitors on a chatbot page to distrust the service. This comes directly from New York City. And there's no way for an average user to know if their reading is false. Now, it often provides answers without any links, which makes it, you can't verify. But even when you have links, they've done studies on Google where Google does those AI answers and it gives links sometimes too. People are significantly less likely to click on the links because of the fact that it sounds right and it verified with sources. Therefore, I can just trust the answer. So links actually make the answer more credible, even though people don't follow them. That's a problem because this is giving answers that are wrong. And if you follow those answers, you will be fined and or sent to prison. So we're trusting an AI to give us answers that are incorrect. And you might say, well, everything makes mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. The problem is that when we had Google or Google type, inside of if this was a Google form inside of a New York City page, it would give you results. You could look at the page and read the actual information. And you could say, oh, it says no. But the problem is we don't see the actual information anymore. We see the AI summary. And the AI summary is exactly the opposite of what that data says. So it was trained on this data. This was retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. It was, it buried the AI in proper context. It gave it all the right information. It gave it the right training information. It pulls from the right data source, and yet it's getting the answers wrong. That'll be important in just a minute. Okay, so let's talk about how this could cost businesses themselves money, not just their customers or a business. Here's one. In small claims court in Canada, this is from 2024. This is Moffat versus Air Canada. This essentially what happened was the chatbot suggested that Mr. Moffat could apply for bereavement fares retroactively. So he's going to fly somewhere. He wanted the bereavement pricing for the airfare. The airlines give a discount if you're flying for a funeral, et cetera. But he wanted to apply for that retroactively. And the chatbot said, yeah, you can do that. Go ahead and do the flight, and then we'll just apply those charges later, or apply those discount later. Air Canada said, no, we're not going to give you that because that's not our policy. Now, Air Canada says it cannot be held liable for the information provided by the chatbot, which is outrageous. So as a company, you have a tool that's giving out information that's wrong, but you're saying, you know what, that's on you. We're not going to take financial liability for that. Even though it told you we would give you a discount, no, we're not going to do that. But the court says, no, you're going to be liable for that because your tool told your customer what it was saying was your policy. And then you try to go back on that. This is going to cost a lot of companies money. Now, the problem is that court cases like these aren't quick to go through the system. It can take years to go through the system. What that means is that if 5 years from now, we'll probably see a lot of these type of cases having been decided across all countries. But by that point, your company may have also made significant inroads into using these chatbots and other tools that set them up for legal liability, and yet didn't even know it until it's too late, right? That precedent being set 5 years from now doesn't mean that your customers that you told the wrong information to for 5 years just can't have any recourse. They're going to sue you, and you're going to probably lose. But you're not going to find out about it for years. So your AI is building up this pool of debt for you that you don't even realize. Hallucinations, they cost. Now this is from 2024. So 2 years ago, hallucinations not gotten better, they gotten worse. But $67.4 billion in losses in 2024 alone from hallucinations. That's a lot. it's getting worse because this is when companies weren't adopting AI as heavily. They're adopting it even more heavily in 2025 and 2026. Here's a few areas where it can be harmful. Finance. Executives have admitted to making major decisions on AI output, with 47% saying they've acted on faulty AI content. So 47% of those executives have said, hey, we've made a decision based upon bad information. Is bad information a problem, right? Like this is one of the examples that I've seen in the wild where a company readjusted their sales territories and changed which salespeople had what territory and how much territory based upon sales numbers that were incorrect. Well, you changed your company. You changed how your employees work. You changed how your employees are compensated. You gave employees more or less money based upon the information that turned out to be incorrect. That can be life-altering for a business. Manufacturing operations. If an AI assistant invents a maintenance step for a CNC machine, stop right there. Would they ever do that? Happens all the time. We saw in the New York City case, they're inventing stuff. They're saying things that aren't true. But what happens if it invents a step for a maintenance plan for a CNC machine or provides outdated safety protocols? AIs have been trained on older information more than newer information because that's what's available. So technicians could make critical errors, leading to downtime, compliance breaches, or worker injury. It's a big deal. You can't just let your AI tell you what to do because it's going to give you the wrong information every once in a while, not all the time, for that maintenance work. And that could be incredibly damaging for the company, for the employee, and for the machine. So beyond the direct risks, hallucinations erode trust. Now, I want to point out at this point, if you read the URL, this is from Quora.ai. Can you imagine the direction they're going? Okay, so I want you to read everything you do with a grain of salt. All this information has been good and correct, but here's where things can go off the rails. When you look at things from a one-sided perspective, which is what this series is all about, is both sidesing it. Now, I'm not covering the good stuff because of the fact that I think we've all been told that over and over and over again, but we're looking at the impacts, the negative impacts of AI. When you don't look at it from both sides, when you look at this stuff and say, yeah, but here you get how to eliminate hallucinations, which, by the way, if this were actually true, if you could eliminate hallucinations, this would be, if this company could do it, it would be the leading company in the world. But let's look at what it says to do. Number one, ground your AI in knowledge. RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Let's remember back to that New York City example. They grounded their AI in RAG. That's number one. But they still got hallucinations. Okay, let's move on to number two. Always provide citations. Okay, that example from New York City, they didn't always provide citations, but they did provide citations sometimes. Number three, continuously improve. Isn't that always the case? User feedback train system over time, pushing accuracy beyond the 95% baseline. Okay, we've seen that baseline is not 95%. Baseline for what we need is 99.99%. Because remember, those errors compound every time you put another chain link in the system, it compounds. But okay, so let's talk about our CNC machine example for a minute. It got something wrong and a worker lost their arm. They put their arm in the wrong spot and it tore off their arm. Yeah, let's give it feedback. Let's give it feedback and make sure that it knows that's not right. Doesn't help. We have our example from that chatbot that gave out that returned customers money more often than the documentation said they should. And they gave it very clear guidelines, but I said, yeah, but I get better feedback when I give money away. Okay, just because you get better guidelines doesn't mean it's going to improve. Just because you ground it in RAG doesn't mean it's going to be better. Just because you provide citations doesn't mean it's going to be right. So really, the conclusion of this article, it's false. It's a desired outcome. It's a, in the perfect world, in, best case. But the reality is it's not the perfect world. We're not in best case. The reality is a whole lot messier, and we can't achieve elimination of hallucinations. All right, let's talk about replacing humans with AI. It's going badly, which is awesome. I mean, as an employee myself, former employee myself, as a person who has sons that need to be employed and who likes to see other people employed, I kind of like the idea that AI is failing at replacing humans. But let's talk about why. First takeaway of the trend is real that a total of 80% admitted to trimming their human staff to make investments in AI. There's a lot of companies out there saying, hey, we're replacing our staff because AI can do a better job. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is 80% of companies are saying they're reducing their human staff in order to pay for AI. So 80% admitted trimming the human staff to make investments in AI or autonomous technology. So saying, we're going to pay for AI with your salary, okay? But they have no idea if AI would actually generate any benefit. They're gambling with our jobs. But this Gartner survey found that execs who slash staff to invest in AI have seen the same financial gains as those who held on to their employees. In other words, attempting to replace workers with AI isn't showing any detectable returns. And what they did was they sacrificed valuable institutional knowledge and employee goodwill for nothing. Now, I'm going to push back even further on this because it says that, hey, you have AI or workers, it's a wash. But the reality is this is just in the bottom line right now. But remember, AI doesn't always surface the problems. They're hidden for a while, even if you get AI to work, quote unquote, well. So these problems are going to pop up more and more and more and seem more and more expensive. And we'll get into expense in just a minute. But even with this, they're saying, forgetting those long-term problems, forgetting the underlying problems that are silently going to build up that avalanche of problems, forgetting all of that, just short-term, it's a wash. And here's where the pricing comes in. Uber. This came out in April of this year, April 16th, which means that it's really for January through the end of March, probably. Uber's engineering team burned through its entire AI budget in the first few months of 2026. Their entire budget in a quarter, which means if you just make the budget flat, like if they say how much we used in the first quarter was the same as the second quarter, is the same as the third quarter, same as the fourth quarter, their budget has to increase fourfold in order to just meet what they're doing right now. What line item from any budget at any company can stand to quadruple and it'd be okay? Like, this is not a survivable thing. This is not something that companies can just go, yeah, cool, no problem. And this is what ordinary companies are feeling. Now, this is from Claude Code, okay? And let's look at a little bit more. So the blowout stems from consumption-based token pricing. Uber's R&D expenses hit $3.4 billion in 2025. So that's up 9% from 2024. So in 2025, they were spending $3.4 billion on research and development. Now, AI token usage is just a part of that. It's not the whole thing. They don't say how much they use in tokens. But their R&D went up 9%, which is a significant budget increase in a year. And whatever chunk, let's just say that AI is 10%. So $340 million of that was AI usage. I'm guessing it's higher than that, but let's just say it's 10% of that $3.4 billion. $340 million. And let's say in 2026, they said, you know what, we're not going to increase the budget at all. So 2026 budget was the same as 2025 budget. That means that they spent $340 million in a quarter, which means that now they're going to be spending, I'm going to have to do the math on this, $1.3 billion this year in AI usage, when their whole budget was $3.4 billion, which means that their budget would have to go up from 3.4 to roughly $4.2 billion just because credits cost more. Most companies cannot afford a jump like that, but it gets even worse because this is from Claude Code. This is from the first 3 months of 2026. But what's happening in the AI space in general right now? Let's look at what GitHub is saying. GitHub Copilot is one of the larger company-installed systems for using AI. After June 1, model multipliers will change for GitHub Pro, GitHub Pro Plus subscribers, stay on the annual plans under request-based billing. They are increasing the rates. Now, these rates also increase for their API customers, rates up all over. When they talked about the rate increase, so I use GitHub Copilot sometimes, and you'll see different multipliers. So when I was using Copilot, I would see like Claude Opus 4.6 would be like a 3x multiplier. So one credit would go a third of the way towards the use. You know, if I used a 1x model, it's 3 times cheaper than the 3x model of Opus 4.6 or 4.7. So that's understandable. Different models have different costs, right? But it went from 3 to 9x. But then June 1, it's going to 27x. That's a big deal. So what GitHub did was they created this, probably vibe code because it's got some bugs in it, but this website where you could upload the CSV of your usage from April. And they said, okay, take your April usage and we'll run it through the same process, the same cost structure as if it was in June. So from April to June, you'll be able to see what it would have cost in April, or what it did cost in April, and what it will cost that same usage in June. Let's look at some of these numbers. These are all personal numbers, but let's look at some numbers. From $39 to $1,063. That is an incredible price jump. Now, these are personal numbers, which means this person's going to go, I'm not doing that. Instead of spending $400 a year, I'm going to be spending $12,000 a year. That's just not possible. That's too much of a jump. But look at that difference. Look at the percentage difference. Now, you might be saying, Tim, you're cherry picking. I'm not. Let's look at this one. 105 to 2,700. Again, massive difference. Well, you're cherry picking. Sure, here's one. $10 to $41. You might say, that's super reasonable. $41 isn't the end of the world. Stop looking at that. Look at the percentage change. 400% increase. Which means that if you're a business and this happens to you, like Uber, you're going to be running out of money in, early April from a January change. So if this happens June 1, you're going to be running out of money in July or August for the year. But let's keep going because, again, that's actually cherry-picked. $10 is $766. $39 is $672. $64 is $1,600. $10 is $26. That's only 250% increase. $10 is $275. Again, selling as, well, not really a small number, but it's a smaller number. And actually, I highlighted this. You can upgrade to a max plan, which will reduce your cost by $95. So now it's only $180, which means if you upgrade to a max plan, paying more money, then you will only get a 1,800% increase in price. That's it. So this is a problem. And companies who are basing their whole process, they're injecting AI into their entire process, whether it is chatbots, whether it is developers using AI credits to build more and better and faster things that are more complicated and harder to maintain, or it's injecting it into multi-step processes, whatever the case may be, those things have costs. And when you do invest in this, you're going to tie yourself to companies that have proven that they will be okay with 1,800% price increases in 2 months. Can your business survive that? I know a number of businesses where I've talked to people who are like, ooh, we ran out of credits in like a couple of days. We ran out of credits, for the whole month in a couple of days. We ran out of credits, for the year in a couple of months. All of a sudden our bill is skyrocketing. We were told to use AI first, but now we're like, it's cheaper not to. It's actually cheaper to have developers write code than it is to have the AI write the code. If you set your business up to rely on these processes, then you're at the mercy of these companies that, as we've proven, don't have a reliable product, that are going to hurt you long term, that have this, the pebbles that lead up to an avalanche of problems that are silent until they're not, that are going to do things that are going to put us in long-term legal problems. All of that for a system that can increase in price 400%, 500%, 1,000% in a couple of months without any ability to get around that. And you might say, well, we can go to a different service. But the problem is that the Uber example was Claude. This is OpenAI, or this is actually ChatGPT, or I'm sorry, Copilot. All these companies are doing it because of the fact that they're trying to go from the investor financed amount, that $10 is investor financed, to closer to the real number. And I don't think this is the real number yet. But even so, 1,800% increase, I don't think you can survive that. And so a company that relies on AI is putting themselves right behind the 8 ball and at the mercy of these companies. So what can we do? Number one, you got to understand AI's strengths and weaknesses. AI is not good at everything. AI chatbots shouldn't be really a thing for most cases. If you're talking to businesses about what's legal and not legal, it should not be an AI chatbot because it will tell people the wrong thing. So you need to not just say, oh, well, we cite sources at the end. That's not going to be good enough. You're going to need to say AI is not good for this case. You're going to say, you know what? We need to have a search result instead of an AI chatbot in order to give the right answers. You can't just say, well, we'll give it better RAG or better instructions or better prompting. We've seen over and over again that doesn't work. Number two, eliminate AI in tasks that are repetitive. Again, we talked about that idea that just in a 10-step process, 90% uptime turns into 34% uptime. We need to realize that AI doesn't do some things well. Again, strengths and weaknesses. And the idea of repetitive things, it does not do well. It's designed to be creative in how it answers. It's designed to not give the same answer twice. So when you put it in a situation where it has to give the same answer every time, you are guaranteeing that it will not work right. The problem is you're going to hide those problems. They're going to be in production, not in development, because development doesn't do enough testing. You're going to see them in production where, hey, you have, a few hundred tests or a few thousand tests in development. They all seem to work pretty well, or maybe you have one problem. You try and fix it with a better prompt. But then you go into production where you have 10,000, 100,000 a million customers go through it, and all of a sudden you find out that you're giving away too many refunds, or you're giving bad information to customers, giving bad legal advice, you are running the wrong thing. There's problems. Number 3, validate everything AI says or does. It's not enough to say, oh, it's cited at source. You have to go to the source, you have to read the information and verify what the AI said is actually in the source. Because often you will find, not all the time, but often you will find that the AI says one thing, but the source it quote unquote pulled from says the opposite. Validate everything AI says or does. The problem is that means it's probably faster to do it yourself. Number 4, have a backup plan. When you try to put AI into something, when you try to put AI into your process in some way, have a plan to back out of that. Because you're going to find that not everything is going to work the way you expect it to. Those companies that laid off people and said, well, we're laying them off in order to pay for AI. They didn't know if it was going to work or not. Well, you've already lost your business knowledge. You've lost the people that knew how the business worked in order to gain AI that might not work and probably won't. So what are you going to do? Have a plan to roll that back. And that might mean a smaller AI scale out that doesn't replace people, and then you figure out what it can't do. Number 5, reduce AI reliance. You as a company, if you make yourself dependent on AI, if AI were to go away tomorrow, your company would stop working. That's a scary place to be. I know of places where when the AI goes down, the developers stop working and they go home. Guess what? When the AI costs match up with what it actually costs these AI companies to run the inference and build the models and all the rest, then those prices are going to go up like we're seeing with GitHub Copilot. Can you afford to be reliant on AI when those prices may go up, let's be conservative here, 400%? If your budget can't take that, then you need to reduce your AI reliance, not just be thrilled that your developers are using more AI tokens or push the rest of your company to use AI tokens for stuff. This is a problem. You need to reduce your AI reliance. The other part of this is that when you become reliant on AI and say you lay off your workers in order to pay for the AI, or you make your AI or workers use AI for everything, then they start losing their skills. Then all of a sudden, if AI were to go away, or AI were to go away for you because it's too expensive for you, then what happens is you're left with less employees or employees that don't know how to do the job. And that's not valuable either. So your company is becoming more and more reliant on AI to do everything. And that's a serious risk. When I have worked with executives, I have worked with the C-suite on doing evaluations of risk, especially when it comes to technology and saying, hey, we need to look at the risks and the rewards for doing these actions. You need to do a serious risk analysis of AI. Don't just look at, hey, AI is, in theory, making us so much faster. Probably is making us faster at the initial stuff, but not the actual completion. But don't just look at that. Look at what happens if we can't afford AI anymore. What happens then? Because that is going to be a thing that comes up more and more. If companies like Uber, who have all kinds of power when it comes to, they're a massive company that has connections and can talk and try and push down these costs, if they have to quadruple their budget for AI, what is going to stop you, a smaller company probably, from having to do the same? You're going to have to. And if you're reliant on AI, that could be a massive issue. So at the end of the day, AI does hurt companies. And the more you absorb AI into your process, the more you rely on AI for everything you do, the more danger you're placing yourself and your customers and your long-term health as a business. Be very careful to not just look at the benefits of integrating AI, but look at the short and long-term dangers and costs of AI and what it might mean for your business. All right, thanks for watching. As always, I am Tim Corey.